For context, I live alone in a small rental house in northern Minnesota. It's nothing fancy, just a single-story place with a detached garage and a long gravel driveway that disappears into trees. Winters here are brutal, but I've lived in this state my entire life, so snowstorms never really bothered me until this one did. This happened in late January, during what was supposed to be a routine winter storm. The weather reports called it a moderate system. Nothing out of the ordinary. I worked from home that week and stocked up on groceries the day before, fully planning to stay inside until the roads cleared. By early evening, the snow was coming down thick and heavy, the kind that blurs everything beyond 20 feet. Wind rattled the windows hard enough that I checked them twice, just to make sure they were locked properly. Around 7:30 p.m., the power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. That wasn't unusual either. Power outages happen all the time during storms like this. I lit a few candles, pulled on a hoodie, and settled onto the couch with my phone and a portable charger. Cell service was still working, though slow. At around 8:15, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Your porch light is still on." I frowned. That didn't make any sense. The power was out. I typed back, "Power's out, light shouldn't be on." 3 dots appeared almost immediately. It is. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. I stood up and walked to the front window, wiping away the condensation with my sleeve. The porch was barely visible through the snow, but I could clearly see it. My porch light was glowing. I remember standing there for a long moment, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was running on a backup line? Maybe the outage was only partial? But none of my interior lights were working, and neither was the heater. I checked my phone again. No new messages. I locked the front door. Then I double-checked it. Then I checked the back door too. At around 9, the storm worsened. Wind howled so loud it sounded like something was scraping along the side of the house. I turned off the porch light manually using the switch near the door, even though it felt pointless. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "You turned it off." My heart started pounding. "Who is this?" I typed. The reply came instantly. "Someone who knocked." I froze. I hadn't heard a knock. But then again, with the wind and my hearing dulled by anxiety, maybe I missed it. I didn't respond. Another message arrived. "I can't stay out here long." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. No one should have been out there. The driveway alone was nearly impassable by now. Snow had to be over a foot deep. Then I heard it. A knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. 3 slow taps on the front door. I stood perfectly still. The knocking stopped. Seconds passed. Then another text. "I know you're home." I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone charger, shoving it into my pocket like it would somehow protect me. I texted my neighbor, who lived about half a mile down the road. No response. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Hello?" A man's voice called through the door. My car stuck. I didn't answer. "I just need to warm up," he continued. "Please." I held my breath. Something about it felt wrong. His voice wasn't strained by cold. It was calm. Too calm. I checked the time. 9:27 p.m. Then my phone buzzed again. "You should answer." That's when I realized the messages and the knocking were connected. I quietly moved to the side window and peeked through the blinds. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I noticed footprints. They circled my porch, not leading up to it, circling it. Perfect ovals pressed deep into the snow, like someone had been pacing there for a while. I felt nauseous. The knocking turned into pounding. "Open the door," the man said, his voice suddenly sharp. "It's freezing." I finally found my voice. "I've called the police," I shouted, even though I hadn't. Silence. Minutes passed. The wind roared. Snow battered the house. Then my phone vibrated one last time. "They won't get here in time." That's when the back door handle started to turn. I stayed seated for a long time after the bus pulled away. The engine noise faded into the storm, leaving nothing but wind and the faint hum of the streetlight above me. Snowflakes blew sideways, stinging my cheeks. The bus shelter offered almost no protection, and my fingers were already starting to feel numb. I checked my phone again. No service. The road in front of me was completely empty. No headlights, no taillights, nothing. Just a long stretch of highway disappearing into white darkness. I tried to reassure myself that another bus would come eventually, even though I knew deep down that wasn't true. That had been the last route of the night. I stood up and paced a few steps, boots crunching loudly in the fresh snow. That's when I noticed the footprints. They weren't mine. Two distinct sets of boot prints came from the tree line behind the bus stop and stopped just short of the shelter. They didn't continue past it. They didn't lead away. They just ended. I stared at them, my breath fogging the air. The snow was still falling steadily, which meant those prints were recent. Very recent. I turned slowly, scanning the woods beyond the road. The trees swayed violently in the wind, branches creaking and snapping under the weight of the snow. Visibility was terrible, but I could still make out dark shapes between the trunks. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it. No answer. I told myself it could have been another passenger waiting earlier. Maybe someone had gotten picked up by a car. Maybe the storm had distorted the snow. But my instincts were screaming that I wasn't alone. I decided to walk. My apartment was about 2 miles down the road. Normally, that wouldn't be a big deal. But in this weather, with freezing temperatures and no cell service, it felt dangerous. Still, standing still felt worse. I pulled my hood tighter around my face and started down the road, keeping my eyes on the ground. After about 5 minutes, I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped too. I waited, counting my breaths. 1, 2, 3. I turned around. Nothing. The road behind me was empty. Snow erased details quickly, but I could still see fresh footprints forming behind mine, matching my pace. I started walking again, faster this time. So did the footsteps. My heart slammed against my ribs. I didn't dare look back again. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my phone when I tried to check for signal again. Still nothing. The wind picked up, howling so loudly it drowned out most other sounds. I focused on keeping my feet steady, but fear made my movements sloppy. I slipped once and nearly fell. When I caught myself, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The footsteps behind me were closer now, too close. I could hear breathing, heavy control, not labored from the cold. Whoever it was, they weren't struggling. I spun around. A man stood less than 10 feet away from me. He was tall, bundled in a dark parka, pulled tight around his face. A scarf covered his mouth, and snow clung to his shoulders and hood. His eyes were the only thing visible. They were locked on me. "I'm just trying to get home," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want any trouble." He didn't respond. He just stood there, watching. I took a step back. He took a step forward, Panic surged through me. I ran. My boots slipped on the icy road as I sprinted, lungs burning as cold air tore into my chest. Behind me, I heard him running too. He was fast, faster than me. I veered off the road toward a small cluster of houses I could barely see through the snow. Lights glowed faintly in the distance, and that gave me just enough hope to keep going. I screamed for help as I ran, but the wind swallowed my voice. Suddenly, I felt a hand grab the back of my coat. I screamed again and twisted, managing to rip free as fabric tore. I stumbled forward and crashed into a snowbank, my face slamming into the cold. I scrambled up, disoriented, expecting him to be right there, but he wasn't. I looked around frantically. Nothing. No footsteps. No movement. It was like he'd vanished. I didn't stop running until I reached the nearest house. I pounded on the door with everything I had left in me. After what felt like forever, a middle-aged man opened it, confusion quickly turning to alarm when he saw my state. He let me in immediately. I collapsed onto his couch, shaking uncontrollably as he called the police. By the time officers arrived, I could barely explain what happened. They searched the area. They found nothing. No footprints. No signs of anyone else. The storm had erased everything. I stayed at that house until morning. When the weather finally cleared, an officer drove me home. Before he left, he said something that still haunts me. "Just so you know," he said, "this isn't the first report like this we've had during storms. People disappearing, being followed, then nothing." I asked him what he thought it was. He shook his head. "Winter makes people do strange things," he said, "and it hides them well. I haven't taken public transportation during winter storms since, and every time I hear footsteps behind me in the snow, I don't turn around anymore." I moved into my apartment complex in early December, right before winter fully set in. It wasn't my first choice, but it was affordable and close to work. The building itself was old, 3 floors, no elevator, thin walls, but it was quiet, which mattered more to me than anything else. At least, it seemed quiet. The complex sat at the edge of town, bordered by a wooded area on one side and an unplowed service road on the other. Once winter hit, that road basically disappeared under snow, cutting us off from any foot traffic. Most tenants kept to themselves, and aside from the occasional door opening or TV noise, I rarely saw anyone. That included my next door neighbor. I'd lived there almost 2 weeks before I ever saw him. The first time was in the hallway. I was carrying groceries up the stairs when the door across from mine opened suddenly. A man stepped out, nearly bumping into me. He was tall and thin, wearing a heavy winter coat even though the hallway was warm. His hood was up, shadowing most of his face. "Oh, sorry," I said instinctively. He didn't respond. He just stared at me. Not aggressively, not friendly either, just blank. After a few seconds, he stepped past me and headed down the stairs without a word. I remember thinking it was rude, but nothing more than that. Plenty of people didn't like small talk. A few days later, the storm warnings started. The local news talked about a major system moving in, heavy snow, high winds, possible power outages. They advised people to stay indoors if possible. I planned to do exactly that. I stocked up on food, charged my devices, and made sure everything was locked. By the time the snow started falling that evening, it was already thick enough to reduce visibility across the parking lot. Around 9 p.m., the power went out. I wasn't surprised. The lights flickered once, and then everything went dark. The building groaned as the wind picked up, rattling windows and sending snow slamming against the walls. I lit a candle and settled into bed with my phone. That's when I heard the knock. It came from the wall next to my bed. At first, I thought it was just the building settling. Old apartments made all kinds of noises in bad weather. But then it happened again. 3 distinct knocks. Slow, deliberate, coming from the wall that separated my apartment from my neighbors. I froze. I waited, listening. Nothing. A minute passed. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Hey, power's out, you got a charger?" My stomach tightened. I hadn't given my number to anyone in the building. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately. "Your neighbor." I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Which neighbor? There was a pause this time, long enough that I thought maybe it was a mistake. Then, across the wall, another knock echoed through the apartment wall. I didn't answer. I wasn't trying to be rude. I was genuinely uncomfortable. Something about the timing felt off. The knocks, the text, the fact that he had my number. I locked my bedroom door. A few minutes later, the knocking returned. Louder this time. More impatient. My phone buzzed again. "It's freezing in here." I checked the time. 9:23 p.m. I told myself it was possible he got my number from the building management somehow. Maybe there was a tenant list. Maybe I was overthinking it. But I didn't reply. The knocks stopped. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind scream outside. Snow piled up against the windows, completely blocking out the streetlights. Then I heard movement in the hallway. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, stopping outside my door. I held my breath. A shadow passed beneath the doorframe as someone stood there. Then came the knock. This time, it was on my door.